Kelsey. Lil had always worked. She'd had to. Fisherfolk looked after their own, and Lil had never been short of nets to make or mend, fastened to the wall in her backyard in fine weather, or in her living room in winter. She was employed by the Great Grimsby Coal, Salt and Tanning Company Limited, who manufactured all sorts of equipment for the fishing industry, and was allowed to be a home worker because of her young daughter. But still, times were hard, and the recent war had not improved matters, though she'd always had a roof over her head, her daughter, Irene, and good friends next door. Indeed, all the inhabitants of their street were friendly. A close-knit community, many of whom were involved in the town's fishing industry. The men went to sea together, and the women supported each other when their menfolk were away. The street where Edie and Lil lived side by side was a long road of red brick terraced houses not far from the fish docks. The front doors were painted brown, the doorsteps and windowsills worn by constant scouring with donkey stone by the house-proud women. Every so often, a passageway ran between the houses, one of which was on one side of Edie's house. On the other, Edie shared the wall between her house and Lil's. Often they could each overhear what was going on next door. The back door opened from the scullery onto a small, concreted area where a tin bath hung on a hook near the outside privy. And then there was a long strip of ground, where most householders grew vegetables. At the end of the garden was a shed and a fence with a door in it leading out to an alleyway, shared not only with the other houses in their own road, but also with the occupants of the terraces in the adjacent street. Lil wasn't the only widow on the street whose husband had been drowned in the course of his dangerous work. Now there were so many more who'd been lost. Husbands, fathers, brothers, and sons killed in the war. Lil never complained, however. She accepted her lot in life and got on with it. But what she would have done without her good friend Edie Kelsey, Lil didn't know. Lily Bailey had been born in the back streets of the town with an indolent father and a careworn mother. The eldest of 6 children, she had frequently been kept at home from school to help with the younger ones and the never-ending housework. When Tom Horton, a handsome, hard-working Decky, had proposed to her, she had accepted gratefully. But sadly, she wasn't to escape the hard life as she'd hoped to do, for only 2 years later Tom was gone, and Lil was a widow at only 20. When they'd married, Tom had found them a terraced house as far away from her former home as he could, but Lil had still felt obliged to visit her family to help her mother when Tom was away at sea. "You would go and get yourself married and leave me to do all this," Norma, the next sister in line, who'd had to take on the household duties from Lil, had grumbled. Norma was a cheerless, plain girl, resentful that she had none of Lil's prettiness. "And I'm not likely to snare a husband with all of them young fellas not coming back from the war, am I? You've been lucky." That had been the Great War, the war that had been supposed to end all wars, and yet here they were, just emerging from a second conflict that had robbed them of another generation of young men. In the First World War, Grimsby had been devastated by the losses sustained by their local PALS battalion, the Grimsby Chums, when men from the same families, the same workplaces, even the same streets had been lost. This time, when the authorities realised what heartbreak had been caused to communities, there'd been no PALS battalions, but it didn't mean that towns and cities didn't lose their loved ones, and Grimsby was no exception. And the civilian population had been hit hard too. Situated on the northeast coast of Lincolnshire, and just across the Humber from Kingston upon Hull, the town had taken its share of the bombing. The Bailey family were all scattered now. Their parents were both dead, and only Norma, apart from Lil, still lived in Grimsby on her own in the old family home. Yet the sisters hardly saw each other. Norma worked as a cleaner in 2 or 3 of the grander houses on Bargate, and was well thought of by her employers as a conscientious worker, albeit rather